go. And there's just kind of always this little awkward moment until people funnel into the event. Yes, great. All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Third Place Books virtual event live on Zoom. My name is Kalani. I work on the events team with Third Place Books. For those of you who might not be familiar with us or who might be watching this event from around the country, Third Place Books is an independent bookstore in the Seattle area with 3 neighborhood locations, and we love having author events like this. Obviously, we really miss having events like this in our comfortable bookstores, but we are very grateful to have this virtual space where we can connect authors with our readers. So thank you so much for supporting this event and watching. We would further love it if you show your support for our bookstore and our authors even more by making sure you buy their books with us at our website at thirdplacebooks.com. I will be sharing the links over in the chat throughout the event, so please make sure to show us some love. Make sure to buy our authors' books. We've got some great selections here, which they will be talking about tonight. So I also want to reiterate, we do have plenty of their books in stock at all 3 of our store locations, and we do offer shipping nationwide, and we also have the option of you coming into our bookstore to pick them up. All 3 of our stores are open right now for limited customer browsing, so if you want to pick up at either our Lake Forest Park, Ravenna, or Seward Park locations, you certainly have that option, and we certainly encourage you to do so. While you are on our website, we would love it if you take a look around and take a look at our events calendar. We have been hosting a number of author events throughout these past few months, all across the literary spectrum, including mystery, journalists, novelists, podcasters, poets, and all across the board. So we've got a very, very full October. It's already October now, so thank you guys for kicking us off with our October lineup here. We've got a very, very great month ahead. So I encourage you all watching to please go to thirdplacebooks.com and also follow us on our social media accounts at Third Place Books and stay in tune with all of our events and everything that's going on with our bookstore. We will be ending our event with an audience Q&A, so I encourage you all to please use the Q&A function down below the screen here. You are encouraged to make comments in the side chat as well, but if you do have a question for any of our authors, we encourage you to please stay engaged with the event, ask them some questions, and use that Q&A button below. So tonight, I am very excited to be hosting this virtual event. This is a very special, fun event with 3 acclaimed Seattle area writers who have all been published by Red Hen Press. So leading us off tonight, we have Amber Flame. Amber is a writer, composer, and performer whose work has garnered artistic merit residencies with Hedgebrook, The Watering Hole, and the Vermont Studio Center. Amber also served as the 2017 through 2019 Poet in Residence at Hugo House. Her first collection, Ordinary Cruelty, was published in 2017 by Right Bloody Press, and her second collection is forthcoming with Red Hen Press. And then we have Lena Khalaf Tuffaha. Lena is a poet, essayist, and translator. Her first book of poems, Water and Salt, won the Washington State Book Award and was a finalist for the Arab American Book Awards. Her poems and essays have received the Robert Watson Literary Prize and has been published in Android Journal, the New England Review, the Rumpus, Southern Humanity Review, and World Literature Today, among many others. And finally, we have Kristen Millares Young, who is the author of the debut novel, Subduction. A Paris Review staff pick called it, quote, whip smart. And the Washington Post also called it a brilliant debut. Her essays, investigations, and reviews appear in the Washington Post, Literary Hub, The Guardian, and elsewhere. From 2018 through 2020, Kristen also served as the Prose Writer-in-Residence at Hugo House, and she currently edited the Seattle City of Literature collection, Seismic, in celebration of Seattle's designation as a UNESCO City of Literature. I have been recently reading this one myself. It is available as a free PDF. I will also share that link in the chat. Also happy to share that all 3 of our locations do have paper copies available for free. We have a very limited supply, but please, if you are interested, take a look at this excellent collection by some other great Seattle authors. So with that, I am now going to be hiding myself, muting my screen. Please take it away, Amber, Lena, and Kristen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Kristen, for arranging all of this, and Lena for being an awesome pressmate. I'm grinning, and this is not necessarily anything to do with what I'm going to read. So I would like to say that I'm doing this specific reading in honor of my mother, who passed in 2015. A lot of the poems about that are in this book, Ordinary Cruelty. It's about motherhood and the loss of a mother and the mother body, and being a motherless mother, which is a whole nother thing. But I also want to acknowledge that her birthday is on Saturday. And so I'm feeling very much the ghosts and the haunting. And I'm writing a lot about the ghosts and the haunting in life. So I'm going to share a couple poems from both Ordinary Cruelty and some of those ghost poems that I've been writing. And also just to everyone who's surviving this, that's the only thing we got to do is get through this. There's so much grief and loss, this trash fire situation. So this is for those of you who are still here. Thank you for being here. Please stay. My mom, to sum her up, this is the perfect way to sum her up, I think. Facebook Memories was wonderful enough to gift me back one of her jokes. My mother was a word player. She had a doctorate in philosophy of language, and she loved to play with words. So this is a yo mama joke from my mama. Yo mama so classless, she could be a Marxist utopia. There you go. That's Margareta Slaby, my mom. This poem is a yo mama joke. It's trying again to be funny. This poem is all yo mama is so dead. Your mother is dead. This poem can't be funny. Sweats on stage under the lights. This poem is awkward pauses where the audience was supposed to, the audience didn't. The audience throws rotten hearts on stage. Boo-hoos. This poem is a joke, not haha so funny or roll your eyes. This joke that is also a poem is like quit playing. That's not funny. This joke has gone on for too long, is interrupting your birthday, is 36 days past its point, and this better be fucking hysterical. This poem is not hysterical, is not weeping and wailing, is slow seep from a wound that will kill you. Better get that looked at. Oops, too late. This poem is dead already. Cannot believe it. Did not disintegrate. This poem whooshed up in flames, burned hot, left you its ash. This poem is not a joke. Is it not funny? Quit playing. This poem cannot find its end. Punch line. A new ghost. Bedfellow. How do you kiss a ghost? What kind of mouth meets your hot breath? Can you say, no ghost, no thank you? How do you friend zone a spirit determined to want you, demands your attention, even if only when you finally sleep? What door you lock? What close? Don't ask for it. Is there any agency in submission to a haunting? Or must you lay in wait, trying not to flinch, which you do, even when you hear it coming? Boo. Some more new ghosts. Been writing again about my mom with some grace this time. In this poem, I am the baby. Imagine you want to die, but you have this baby, this need to feed, the squalling mouth opened. Imagine wondering if you take your ghosts with you when you go, an already dead baby in your past. Imagine knowing they will be there in your own haunting, probably this baby too, weak and dwindling. It's so hard to focus on what's not gone when you don't know how to do what's left. Imagine being called back from the humming wonder of your own death by your unshakable sense of responsibility. Imagine every time the baby's mouth opened to cry sustenance, you survived to feed it. Once, when I was 8 years old, my mother spoke another language so well she could write poetry with it. And she wrote poetry so well, the poem built a plane to carry my mother to another country. And in that country, my mother did not need our common language for days. And so she did not use words we would understand. And when she took a train, she spoke with other adults only. And so I imagine she did not think of us much at all until she returned and urged us to learn new words for ourselves. And now, when she has no more words for me to share in any language that isn't dead, now I practice the act of speaking freely and perhaps being understood. I'm going to share one last poem. Smell My Victory. My nephew used to come up to me when he was funky and be like, smell my victory, and give me his armpit to sniff. And so this is in honor of him as well. Smell my victory. I have no grievances tonight, can abide my own company. I am all old pajamas and funky armpits, worked hard 8 days a week and kept it pushing. I am, we don't need no invite to no party. We are the party, tired tonight. I spent my last $20 on rum and pad thai. It is the full moon. I would enjoy company. So I throw my head back and laugh at a marathon of bones on Netflix. Dead, desiccated bodies are hilarious. I roll my eyes and pout at the neighbor too loud upstairs again, like that bitch don't ever work, sleep, or shut the fuck up. I sit in my own goddamn magic circle, company unto my own self. It's all right that my friends didn't call me back. I know it's raining, because I can hear the tires outside my window flinging growing puddles back into the air. I've done something big today. I can hold this space for funky armpits and full and moon and howl and work tired and alone happy and also, thank you.
It is so good to hear your voice again, Amber. It is so good to see you live. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. I mean, for real. I cannot wait to see Apocrypha in print.
Me too.
I wanted to also shout out to Red Hen Press, right? Because this is a moment where we're coming together in part because of the ways they're bringing our work into the world. It's a hard thing to do, especially in a pandemic. And I have never been more proud to be represented by a nonprofit indie who's scrappy and staying with it. And it's going to be that I am the party tired by the time this thing is done, right? But is keeping on. So thanks for going local and indie. And for all of you watching here, this talent, I shared an office with Amber for a year, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me at Hugo House and in my life. So it's been a pleasure to be your friend ever since. I'm going to share a very short excerpt from my novel, Subduction. There's so many ways that when you're on tour describing your book, you know, that you are conditioned to talk about it. This is about the meeting of diaspora and indigeneity, which is true. This is about cultural appropriation and exploitation that is, you know, breaches sexual consent. That is also true. You know, this is about a Latina anthropologist who drags her damage to a Native community that was not anticipating her particular brand of exploitation. And that is also true. This is a love story. And that is also true in its own fraught, fucked up way. So this scene I'm going to read is about that anthropologist as she takes a beach walk with the son of her best hope for a meaningful qualitative study. And it's a moment, a hushed moment in between a time of a lot of turmoil for these families as they are tasked with and tasking themselves with helping to preserve their generational knowledge across chasms of forced disinterest, self-shame, the long trajectory toward whiteness that is assimilation in this country, and grappling with that and not necessarily recognizing that the shame that they bear is a weaponized emotion of the settler colonial state, essentially. And it's something that I have been very curious about, having grown up in a multi-generational house in Cuban diaspora, coming to terms with the ways that every immigrant to this country becomes a settler, immediately complicit in the divestment of indigenous lands from their first peoples. So I do want to shout out that we are on the land of the Duwamish. That collection Seismic that he showed has a really beautiful story that is truth from Ken Workman, who is the great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle. And in this oral history that he gave to me that I helped shape into an essay that he performed with a number of others at the launch on September 15th, he talks about the science behind the metaphors that people have always thought were metaphors in his ancestors' speech, but were instead deep biological truths, which he's able to recognize as an ex-Boeing engineer. So it's a really fascinating piece that concludes Seismic, and Seismic is free. We wanted to make it free to make it accessible to all. And that is something that I'm grateful to Seattle City of Lit for doing, along with the library. However, this book is for sale. Okay, one thing I'd like to do, I'm going to play a little bit of music that Jeff Larson, who's the executive director of the Bushwick Book Club, wrote, and it's on the bass, and he called it The Red Giant, and I'm going to play it as I read this brief excerpt from a beach walk that Claudia, the anthropologist, takes with Peter, again, the son of her best hope for a good study. So. Peter cleared his throat and paused as he came between her path and the shore. The pale sun back behind the clouds, snuffing out the shadows of his face, his black hair absorbing all the light, as black as anything around it. Blacker. Stop staring, she told herself, and smiled, bright, but he did not return it, and kept instead a steady gaze that said he had seen her hunger. She dropped her eyes to the tangled bull kelp at her feet, their slimy fronds twisted around a net at the rack line, where breakers made their final sally before retreating, restless. A cloud of black flies floated around her ankles, her tennis shoes squished into a nest of smaller sea plants. She stepped past the racket of the lac high tide and onto the smooth, flat sand, and they kept on, not talking, the footprints erasing themselves with damp exhales from beneath, the closest she'd get to leave no trace, or walking on water. The sea stood up and toppled over, dragging kelp and sand into itself before rising, again and again, reaching for the shore. Its passage left a thick sheen on the crust of crushed shells, which rolled on their sides and sighed, sated. Their shoulders brushed once and again as they walked, footsteps moving toward and away from each other in subtle waves that stretched long with the languid tempo of dune ridges. Ruddy cliffs held back a cedar forest that spilled over, curving toward the sea atop a dark headland, tide pools bared to the sky. She kept her focus on that outcropping, trying not to watch Peter from the corners of her eyes as they drew nearer. His shadow at her periphery had become too much to bear. Grazing her hand, her entire body aligned to him like filings on a magnet, and she looked without looking, hearing his weight change on the beach. Claudia was relieved when they came to the headland's surf-addled rock. Where air had been, life crept in, a profusion of glossy mussels and rough barnacles, orange and purple sea stars, lime and crimson anemones, and emerald plants she could not name. Claudia crouched before the first pool, its stillness a pane of glass into a world that did and did not pertain to her. A velvety red anemone swayed, stirred by some unseen force. She pushed a finger into its cold home, slow and careful. The anemone tuned to her, its rubbery receptors waving in her direction, beckoning. They clung to her as she slipped her nail into the fold of its body, trying to be gentle. It held her, and she lingered, feeling how dear this was, this aggressive embrace, and how was this creature's weakness, and not the ferocity of its intent, nor the cunning of its perception that made it dear. Her power inspired a rising tenderness. She tickled but poked no further, inclining her head so a sky mirror drew over the pool, and she could regard herself being maternal. Beside her shifting face, she saw Peter. His eyes were on her. The air thickened into mist, blurring their reflection. Come again tomorrow, he said, and left her there. Thank you. So thanks for listening, and thank you to Jeff Larson for the accompaniment on bass. Lena, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kristen, who has worked tirelessly to plan this event and generously to include us in it, and to bring us together, and for your beautiful reading, and the land and the stories, and imagination that's honored in your work. And thank you to Amber. It's so great to be in this space with you and to be able to hear your poems. It always feels like a gift to hear your poems. I'm really honored to be here. Again, my name is Lena Khalaf Tuffaha, and I am a Red Hen author of this book, Water and Salt. This is my first full-length poetry collection. I am the author who saw her book at AWP and completely started to cry. The whole Red Hen staff knows, so that's me. I'm the crier. Water and Salt is a collection that came together over, for me, the writing of it came together over 10 years. And the picture on the cover, the image that you see here, is from a neighborhood in Gaza called Shajaiye. And the neighborhood was bombed into oblivion in the 2014 war. This is a picture that a friend took. His name is Jihad. And Shajaiye, I always think about what the people of that neighborhood and many neighborhoods and all of Gaza and Palestine have gone through, but that neighborhood's name means home of the brave. And I just sort of think about that a lot. And it's a great privilege to have the image of that blue door that's slightly open with the sunlight streaming through. It's a privilege to me to be able to carry that image around the world on this book. A lot of the poems in the book are about Palestine and the experience of being Palestinian American and Arab American. And so I'll just start with a kind of elegy. Yesterday was the anniversary. There are many sort of sad anniversaries that are marked for people who are still under occupation after decades. And the particular one that we marked yesterday was the murder of a child, a 12-year-old boy named Muhammad al-Durra. So 20 years ago, on September 30th, 2000, this young boy who was 12 years old and his father were caught in a hail of gunfire by Israeli soldiers against a wall in Gaza. And the image is indelible. Any Palestinian you say the words Muhammad al-Durra in front of knows that video footage. We literally watched him die on live television. And I particularly was changed very deeply by watching this event because I was a new mom at the time. So I watched this holding my baby in my arms. And it's important, I think, to say these things and to say these names that might not be known everywhere and to mark these anniversaries, not just in the privacy of the community immediately affected by them, but in the larger community of human beings who are, whether they know it or not, affected by these horrific crimes against humanity. So Muhammad and many other babies are the root of this elegy. Mountain Stone. Do not name your daughters Shayma. Courage will march them into the bullet path of dictators. Do not name them Sundus. The garden of paradise calls out to its marigolds, gathers its green leaves up in its embrace. Do not name your children Malak or Ranim. Angels want the companionship of others like them, their silvery wings trailing the filth of jail cells, the trill of their laughter a call to prayer. Do not name your sons Hamza. Do not taunt the torturer's whip with promises of steadfastness. Do not name your sons Muhammad, Ahid, Zakaria, Ismail. They will become seashells, disappear in the sand Do not name your children. Let them live, nameless, seal their eyelids, and sell their voices to the nightingale. Do not name your children, and if you must, call them by what withstands this endless season of decay. Name them mountains, call them stone. One of the things that is getting me through these days meaning the extension of the days we were always having, I guess. Like, you know, I want to be careful about the language as a poet. I want to be careful about language that we use. These days are extensions of the days that many of our communities have always been having, just pushed to an extreme beyond anything we could have ever imagined. And so I want to say that poetry has been for me not an escape, but a sustenance, a reminder of, you know, our deepest humanity. And so I turn to the poet resistors and the poet warriors to fill my heart. I turn to the women who taught me, Audre Lorde, June Jordan, Adrienne Rich, and the many voices that helped me imagine how to be in a world that requires our constant resistance, right? So this is a shout out to everybody who's putting their body on a street in an American city, in a Palestinian city, in cities and towns all across the world for the cause of freedom. And maybe to the poems that I hope sustain us while we do that work. Copybooks. Our teachers were kind in the way that people who have sipped tea or shopped at the local bakery with your parents would be. They taught us to stand up straight and motionless when people who had control over our lives walked into the room. They taught us to chant at the daily morning assemblies, praises for the king and the country and the right heroes and the important revolutions. They taught us so well, some of us believed the chants, drank them into our bloodstreams, and loved the stick figure histories of the songs. They taught us to copy in perfect curlicues and lofty upstrokes across the page, beautiful equations they solved for us, and facts about combustions and the life cycle of honeybees. Most of their teachings served us well. We live in the shadow of leaders' palaces. There are always long lines, so good posture and deference is our currency. But best of all, they taught us poetry. They tucked gleaming verses into our hearts and let them sleep for years. They said, remember these words. This is where you are from. Write this in your copybook. And then just one of the experiences that many people probably share is if you are from another country of origin, or if your parents are from another country and you retain ties to that homeland of origin, your parents probably dragged you back home in the summer if they could at one point or another, or maybe many times. I know we did that with our kids. So I spent a good amount of time in airports as a kid, and I had some feelings about that. But it's also, I think this poem is also a kind of song to the in-between, right? Where a lot of us who come from many places actually feel where we belong. Cruising altitude. Like the milky marble with the azure eye that lulled to and fro in the wooden track of the childhood puzzle, the one my mother would buy to keep me busy in line after long line, I lean back, I lunge forward. Resting on the old Samsonite, passport pages flickering fast, crackle of languages universally garbled over a loudspeaker, I move around, trailing my tribe in orderly circles. Finally through, I am suspended in my given slot. A place that was home flashes by the window, sinks beneath the mammoth wings. The shades are drawn, eyelids surrendering. Soon the roar of ascent quiets into a measured breathing of engines, strands of daylight submerged in a sea of clouds. Time will fall away as we travel back into moments others have not yet lived. Soon enough, the hum of voices thins out in the stale air. Nowhere is a homeland, too. And I'll just close with the title poem of the collection, Water and Salt. And I'll say briefly about this that in 2014, before the war on Gaza began, Palestinian prisoners, Palestinian political detainees specifically, across all of the different detention centers where they are imprisoned, Israeli detention centers, decided to stage a coordinated hunger strike to demand their release, their freedom. And they subsisted on only water and salt for many weeks. And in Arabic, the phrase water and salt has a very musical sound, mayu mileh. And so you would see that graffitied all over walls in different Palestinian cities and villages. And it was called the Revolution of Water and Salt, or the Adrab al-Karame, the resistance of dignity. And that really captured my imagination. Water and salt. Behind the walls of your jails, we wait. Heartbeats audible now, muffled thuds above the current of blood running thin, indigo rivulets pulsing loud beneath parchment skin, chafing and coarse like stone walls that surround us. We lie side to side. We hunger for what eating cannot feed. We carve out a sanctuary that no beating can tear down. No interrogation room scars can pierce. This is our ache. We decide how we live, and if we die, we decide who gives and who takes away. We claim the freedom to turn stone into sunlight streaming through your jails, to sip water and salt like sacrament. Freedom to own our bodies and the land beneath them, to breathe the air on both sides of the wall. Freedom to wait and wait for your checkpoints and your watchtowers to be subsumed in a crashing wave of water and salt. You never saw it coming, this cleansing, how we have become this ocean. Thank you.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I'm so curious to hear about what you're writing now, given the amount of grief and indignity, which must be both recognized and then also resisted in some ways. I'm curious to hear what you're working on now, frankly.
Thank you so much. I have a chapbook that just came out in 2019. This is with Diode. I'm going to show it because why not?
Yes.
Called Letters from the Interior. And a lot of the poems that I've been working on are really focused on women and the ways in which women do all of the work to preserve us in times of unraveling, whether it's through preserving language or stories. They are so often tasked with carrying the entire culture. And the Palestinian story is woven and braided into other Arab stories around it. So, I think a lot about the Palestinian refugee camps in the heart of a city like Damascus. Just think about the double, quadruple losses that people are experiencing there. And then just the erasure. It's really even difficult to say Palestinian in a lot of spaces still to this day. Mm-hmm. So just really doing the work to imagine a future in which we can just be fully who we are. And where the struggle for freedom can just, in the United States at least, can be fully recognized for what it is, just that, a struggle for freedom.
That's something that really unifies your work with Amber. She recently had a poem in an anthology that came out, Alone Together, right? And we're, trying to support independent booksellers. And I'm curious, Amber, about how you carve space into the imagination for the kind of freedom that Lena's talking about. How does that, with the constant onslaught of this culture, like how? Tell us. Show us the way.
I mean, that's the stepping into the joy piece. What they can't take away from you. The only thing you own is your body. car of freedom. It's sort of, how could I not? How do I keep breathing without it? It's, I will get overwhelmed by all the trash and words and lies and misdeeds and all of that if I didn't carve it out. I feel like it's what you turn to instead, essentially. Lena, I was actually thinking about the quote that's been going around. The cure for everything is salt water, tears, sweat, or the sea. And I was like, what is that quote again? And that's what came up for me was like the idea that so much of us is made up of salt and water and salt is so gorgeous. Thank you for that. But yeah, it feels urgent poems, they hit me and then they're there. You know what I mean? They're not something that I can plan to write. I don't see it coming. And those ones feel like they carve something out of me as opposed to being a reprieve or a place of rest.
It's funny, always the best answer is like change the question, right? So you're like, that's the wrong verb. Let's pay attention to some, but I personally have been feeling this almost the strain, you know, of channeling that rivulet, like making the space to turn toward joy as an honorable response to life, right? As the honorable response to life. And it's hard when feeling connected to the suffering, which is so endemic in our society right now, and always, right? But is being daylighted through kind of this ongoing pandemic and the onslaught of brutality against communities of color. And I have been thinking about the role that art can play. And there's the art itself, right? But then there's all these other things that you both also do: mentorship, strengthening bonds between women. And I wondered, maybe Amber, since you have recently begun so much with a new organization for you, but continuing the work that you've been doing for decades, of strengthening ties between women. I'm wondering what you think will be the outcome, or what your hoped for outcome is from these bonds that you're building.
Selfishly or universally?
Let's start with the selfish.
Joy, always joy. Oh my gosh, it's been so joyous in that way, to connect and to feel at service to providing sanctuary and space for women writers specifically. That's selfishly, it's super rewarding to know that I'm devoting my skills to something that I need myself and I fully believe in that way. I need an organization like this, so it's good that I'm working for this organization. You know what I mean? Like, that's a perfect place to put my talents that I have.
That's Hedgebrook, for anyone who's wondering.
Hedgebrook, yes, yeah. Hedgebrook, which is a more than a residency, but it's specifically to uplift the voices of women writers. And I go back to a lot of the work that we're doing as an organization around really defining what our positioning is and what our messaging is. And there's this great just sort of reframing that's happening, I think, because of this, where we're stepping into compassion in a way that we may never have seen such urgent need for. I think all of us in the world are either stepping towards compassion or embracing the results of anger held and stepping towards evil. Like, it feels very good and evil, compassion and disregard for human life. And the lines are being drawn. So you decide what side of history you're going to be on with this. And so to know that somebody said, we uplift women writers because they're writing the words that will change the world. And we've tried patriarchy. That's it. That's all I got.
It work out so well, huh?
No.
Results for themselves.
Yeah. So, let's change the world.
It seems like that begins with unmaking the patriarchy of the mind, which is a challenge, especially for, I'll go ahead and say it, my Latino community was very patriarchal. Mm-hmm. So part of the mechanism for me to connect with the culture that it means so much to my identity and to my family is also one whose bones are the patriarchy. And I'm curious, Lena, how have you reckoned, do you face that similar issue, and how have you reckoned with it? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. For a fellow reckoner. Yeah. Short answer, the TLDR is yes. And absolutely. You know, it's interesting. I was just in conversation with some friends when 185 years ago, when I was an undergrad, there was a launch of an organization in Seattle called the Arab Women's Solidarity Association. And so I was getting together with some friends who were alums of that organization, and we were invited to a local Arab American festival to talk about Arab feminisms, plural.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, because that's exactly the point. Like, you know, there are iterations of this fight, and iterations of, you know, unmaking the ways in which we think that limit us and that inhibit us and that get in our way. And so, you know, my generation hopefully contributed something to that conversation, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I find that my job is to continue to work and question, but also to get out the way, like, and support and listen to the work that's being done by younger women, my daughter's generation, and who have such rich imaginations and fearlessness in, you know, knowing exactly what is needed and putting up with absolutely none of the nonsense. And I think that maybe like that's the success, right? Maybe that's the win, is to hopefully have in any way contributed by raising these kids into people who are fearless and will not put up with any of the patriarchal norms that have choked us for so long. And so it's been interesting and beautiful to watch that unfold, even when, you know, the results don't happen as fast as I would like them to. So that I spent a lot of time talking to younger people this week particularly, and that's been exciting and enriching, and also makes me feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, you know, and that's a good energy. Like, I want that accountability always in my life. Today I was talking to kids at my daughter's high school about a lot of the community organizing I was involved in, specifically after 9/11, the Arab American community, and just like walking through that work again. And sure enough, you know, the key people who led all of those movements and who did all that work, women, right? Women on the front lines of every movement for change and for liberation. And so, yeah, I think that it's just making room for who's coming next and listening. That's where I think the work is now.
Nice.
That's so much more gracious than how I would put it, which is like, basically, I'm getting old, so I'm pretty stuck. I'm going to have to do a lot of unlearning. But meanwhile, these children, they've got it down. They're not.
Yeah, they have no patience for our nonsense.
They've already changed the world, and we're just the leftovers who either will come along with it or not. You know,
yeah, what I mean? Like, you can bake something and show up and be helpful, you know.
Not bake something. Like, oh no, I'm not helpful at all.
Or like staple some handouts or whatever. But you know what? Like, really, there's some grace in knowing when you're called to listen. Is how I think about it.
Yeah, you're called to listen. I love that.
Yeah. It seems that we're being called in so many different directions as mothers, and it's all the same. We know, like, inside, right, that merging these selves, mother, poet, community organizer, performer, that all of these things are all answering that same call. And yet sometimes learning how to listen for the gifts of each can be difficult, especially during a time like now, where as mothers, we're being asked to multitask even more than we've ever done because of what's going on with the schools. And so I'm curious, how are you listening for your work that you're making? How are you finding, where are you making space for that? And tell me.
I'm waiting for Amber to take this one. Piggyback off of whatever brilliant thing you say.
I think of it as keeping a promise to myself. And so I just was talking about this in my class. I go back to, that's, if I had a soapbox, it would come down to, what promise am I going to keep to myself? And it's, I need to write as much as I need to go to the bathroom or drink water or eat food or sleep. I need to, because that's how I will stay in this world and have purpose in this world. So it's balance. I'm not sure that, I think that's a myth. I think that people think, I think it's a constant re-grounding, re-finding your step. And there are times where you will be swept away in the tide of mundanity. Like, just got to take care of all the paperwork that comes with being an adult. And that's when I make a promise to myself. And I say, okay, you do all this paperwork, and then I'm going to give you a day where you don't have to do any paperwork, and you can just be creative, or you can just sleep. And that's okay too. And knowing, trusting that it's not going away. Yeah. It's not just going to disappear on me. It's not going to fizzle out and dry up. That I have all the creativity to tap. And if I nurture it, like that tiny little garden in what's often a rough and tumble neighborhood, you know, you made it on your fire escape and it's like 3 pots of plants, but it grows some great cilantro, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, that little tiny garden that you can nurture of yourself, in yourself. I was going to ask you all about noticing joy. Like, I've been making a practice of trying to notice my joy, notice those moments, because they're not flashy. They're not sparkly. And so I just keep a promise to myself and say, I will, and this is when. I'll be specific about it. And if I go tomorrow, will I care more about the dentist appointment, or will I care more about this poem I needed to write? That's what I got.
See, I was smart to wait for Amber. I take notes. I really needed that, Amber. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
I actually needed that reminder, right?
Yeah.
Maybe find somebody to share your joy with. Like today I noticed this, and you can have my number and you can text me and say, I noticed this moment of joy. It's a weird accountability thing of, yeah, we'll be waiting. We'll be waiting. What are we waiting for? We only have now. And so I'm trying to be now, like Prince said, start right now, create the life you want right now, create the self you want to be right now. And that's enough work. That's enough of a promise.
Yeah, I think a lot about the line from Naomi Shihab Nye, I begin again with the smallest numbers. Yeah. And I find myself saying that like a mantra sometimes, right? When I feel like it's all just too much. Because we are actually, I don't think we give enough credit to ourselves for the amount of reinvention we do in a day, right? Yeah. And I noticed like one little silly meditative thing I do when there's nothing else available to me is I just try to take a picture of something that seems beautiful to me in some way with my phone. Like if I can't write a single word, I just, there's a leaf or a flower or a rock or a something, or, the way my daughter's like curled up on the floor reading her book or whatever. And that image is for me. It's just for me. And if it's the only thing I can make that day, and then I've made that for myself. But I didn't even notice that I was doing that for a while, and then to sort of teach yourself to be grateful for what you're able to do for yourself. That's what your words reminded me of. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. What you create for yourself, just for me.
There's a person who's asked a question who's one of my favorite people within our literary community. So I want to close with this question because this person is amazing. Joyce Chen runs Seventh Wave magazine, incredible community builder. I was so honored to work with her at Hugo House. And she's someone who is writing beautifully about time, intergenerational understandings of that notion, and how we pour ourselves through that understanding into our lives. Can't wait for her book to come out. But her question is this, and she's a master interviewer who has done me the grace of interviewing me for Seventh Wave. So thank you, Joyce. Quote, I love this conversation about stepping into compassion and building community through mentorship and holding space for others. What I'm curious to know is, as 3 extremely talented and giving writers creatives, what are your metrics for success when it comes to being a literary citizen? What keeps you motivated to keep going through tough times? I can take this one. My family had to escape absolute disaster like 2 generations in a row. First from Spain under Franco, and then Cuba under Castro. And famine and loss and everything accompanied both of those, diasporic compulsions. And so when things are like really bad, I actually get very, very focused. I am very good and and it's a problem because then when things relax, I'm still in a hypervigilant state because I was raised to be hypervigilant, and it's been very hard for me to be an American these past years because my vigilance is at such a high degree that it's difficult to recommit always to this nation, which gave my family a chance and which deserves my efforts. I do really believe that the strength of our democracy is dependent on all of our voices coming together. But sometimes being the one to speak is not what I need. What I need is to listen. And so I have poured myself into mentorship as a way of staying close to my understanding of why I'm here. And it is something that feeds back into my life in such a way that that citizenship is not just something that is accorded, it's something that's earned. And it's also something it's given. As a citizen, you give back. Part of the giving back, the rites of passage are learning the lay of the land, figuring out, who's here, showing up for people. And so taking the pleasure then after having been tracking people for a while, to know that things happen for them, I'm genuinely glad for them. I'm like a parent, even though I'm not related to them at all. And really, it's hard to take things out of the motherly joy because that's where I find a lot of the joy in my life. But I feel a sense of deep satisfaction that I most often get as a parent, rather than other aspects of my life. 'Cause I'm very hard on myself with my writing. And so sometimes, I'll get there, I'll get to that satisfaction, but it can be kind of grim by the time I arrive, but mentorship is just pure joy. So doing that, and I've actually begun to enjoy editing, because helping somebody else see clarity seed it into their work and see it for what it is very satisfying. It can be less challenging than wading through your own subconscious, trying to come up with what your offering is and having that be an honest offering, not only what is needed, but also what you need to give at that moment. Sometimes being a literary figure, you don't want to become a figurehead. God, so not that. And so kind of staying close to the rawness of the emotions that bring me into this work and letting that vulnerability into my work is why I still write fiction and why I write personal essays, because that's where you can touch these emotions which are ironed out by other kinds of third person. So that's me.
I think I'll just add to that's beautiful, Kristen. Thank you for all of that. And I would just like to add that, bringing it back to days of community organizing, it is a gift and a privilege to be able to write and have others read it, to be able to be published, to be able to enter spaces where you can share your work. And so for me, I think it's my absolute literary citizen responsibility to interrogate power structures in every single literary space I enter. Who benefits? Who has space here? Who's missing? Why am I taking up space that might really belong to someone else? How am I inadvertently participating possibly in any, inequity? And that's hard work. And it sometimes doesn't seem like it's like related to the creative, spirit, but I actually think it is. It comes from the same deep root that Amber articulated so beautifully earlier. It's just being on the side of compassion, really. And so for me, I think a key part of citizenship that I hope I hold myself accountable to more and more every single day is just, what's the system of power that I'm participating in at this moment? And how can I make sure that it is equitable and that my participation is offering heart and not causing harm.
Wow. Wow, this is how I know y'all are like way more successful than I am right now. No, I'm not saying that like, I'm not saying that with any kind of like self-denigration at all. I'm just saying that takes such, it is like you said, Lena, it's compassion that you both are speaking about. I got really hung up on citizen, Joyce, honestly. It is very hard for me to claim. So funny, citizen, Claudia Rankin sitting right here on my desk. It's so hard to claim that word. I'm really gonna have to interrogate that for myself. What does it mean to be a literary citizen? Because I don't feel, all three of us are disenfranchised people in this country. And yet there's so much privilege that we've attained. And I think that it's new to me. I think that's what I will say, is that it's very new to me, this idea that there's power in my literary citizenship. And so then I must pay attention to what you both just said of like, what am I fostering? What space am I taking up? How much space? And should it actually belong or be open to someone else instead of me? And so I'm gonna have to sit with that for real. I think I'm always ready for somebody to strip me of a label. And that's one of the biggest differences, I think, between me and the two of you. Like even Kristen, you're talking about knowing where you come from, right? Knowing the lineage of your family and the countries and all of those. Lena, you're so rooted in your community. You know who your people are and can name them and be named by them. And that is not my experience. We're a ragtag bunch in my family. You know, it feels very much like we've carved that out, and it's the four of us, and now it's the five of us, and then we have kids, and so it's them too. And but it doesn't feel, that web feels like there's so many strands missing that I don't necessarily feel I can pull on and rely on. So I'm really going to sit with that idea of what it means now to have built something. And I have. And so I had to acknowledge that with this question. It was like, wait a minute, I'm a literary citizen. I've gotten my card in the mail. Literary. And so then, of course, it comes great responsibility. That is exactly what I got from you both, is the responsibility to who comes next. Who comes beside me? Who are my peers? Who am I on the front lines of that line of compassion with? And am I supposed to be on the front lines? Am I supposed to be the one with the loudspeaker? Or maybe I just need to shut up a little bit and step back. And
Please don't shut up.
I know, I'm like, no.
Amber.
Yeah, like,
I don't know that I can. I can't promise. Yes, the grace that you both just shared so eloquently, I really am going to sit with that, what it means as a responsibility. As for success, what is success? Kristen has a lot of success and drives herself nuts, as she says, like writes herself really hard about it. Lena sits in this sort of like wonderful, joyous success place and knows the access points that got her there and is trying to open those doors. I hear that and I'm going, do I have success? If I have success, what does that mean? And how do I then turn that into something that is an open door for more? And I don't think I've been doing it as consciously as I could. And I think that is a challenge you've issued to me, Joyce Chen, and I'm going to take it up. Thank you.
I mean, I would have said that you were already doing it. So I'm excited to see what happens when you like turn it on.
Right.
I rather than seeing you step back, I want to see you continually stepping into your power. It is such a beautiful thing to be part of, to be around, to witness.
Insane. Come on. We can geek out and admire each other all night. So
I know. Sorry. So Mona has 2 quick questions for Lena. Well, one of them is for all of us, but how do the implications of COVID affect your writing routines and aesthetic? Then Lena, I'll give you the other question while we're kind of gnawing on that a little bit. And then we are going to wrap up within the next 3 minutes. So I just want you all to know. How do you relate to Arabic as your mother tongue? The way I see it is language is emotion. I would say COVID has created intense togetherness for my family, which is bringing me back to even more intense times that I had. I had my children very close together and they're very loud. They're very loud boys. And so I'm using a lot of methods, a lot of sonic blocking methods, a lot of, I listen to brown noise. I'm like getting into mechanics here. I'm like, no, I literally, like, I'm having to cover that hubbub is something that I've learned how to do so that I can be in close proximity while being on a different planet in my mind, which I need to do in order to be in writing book length work. So if you all haven't tried it, give it a try.
I will just quickly answer. I'm super fortunate. My kid is older. There's only one of them. She's plenty talkative, but not necessarily loud. And she's super creative. And then I'm very fortunate to have a creative person as a partner. And so I've been able to step into thought partnership and sharing process and editing, like not creating a poem all at once, but coming back to it and making it better concept. Because of that, I've been so graced, by this pandemic to have time that I never had before. So I've been more creative, and then I block, and then I get creative again. So I just allow that flow to happen and know that it's there, and just try to lose the fear around it, I think. But yeah, I'm different circumstance, and definitely feeling my fortune there.
My kids are grown-ish. I have a daughter who's away at college. She's a sophomore. I have a senior in high school. Yes, we're doing that. And I have a 7th grader. And so, there are very quiet times and very loud times, and there's just a lot of mess. There's like, I'm a control freak, and I like to be in charge of all the things in my brain, and I'm in charge of 0 things. And I hate that. And so I am learning to live with a lack of control, and I do it poorly a lot. And then I have moments where I do it well, and I'm able to, access the creative, but I've struggled. It's been bumpy for me because I really like when I can order the day and that's, nope, that's all gone. But I also am really grateful to have healthy family members who I can love on, who are right in front of me, because these kids are growing up and they're leaving, and it's hard to complain about having the gift of a little bit more time with them. And Muna's question about language, thank you for that, Muna. I don't know, I think it's maybe I have twin moms. I actually learned English first, believe it or not. I was born in Seattle. I just didn't grow up here. And so I went home when I was a little girl and had a funny American accent when I would speak Arabic. So it's the first estrangement. And Arabs are ruthless about that. So, my aunties would sort of laugh a little bit at my goofy pronunciation, and that got me working on it very fast. But I do think that's a beautiful way to put it. Language is emotion. And I think language is also memory, and it connects me to people I love. So it's a loving and complicated relationship.
I want to conclude with a brief answer to Anna Vodka's question. She's just a wonderful local writer. And she said, what's your dream wish for Seattle's writing community? What I would say is I would wish that all of the people who are in Seattle would actually read Seismic and listen to the ideas that are contained within that collection, because the Indigenous voices, Rena Priest opening it, Ken Workman closing, this feeling I have, Duji Tahat writing very powerfully about what ways that we can, change our cultural institutions. Claudia Castro Luna doing the same, So my hope is that people will read it and respond to the ideas that are contained within, because they were asked, what does it mean for this city to be a literary city? And putting those minds on that question was a joy. I will also, I'm going to say, I'm going to keep a promise to myself as we welcome Kalani back onto our virtual stage. I'm going to text you some gratitude. Amber, be ready. I will do it. I will totally do it.
Joy.
Yes.
Joy.
I'm gonna work on that. And each time I'll be like, are you stepping into your power?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But I know that you both will be, because that's how you are. And it's part of the reason why I asked you to join me today. I wanted to see your faces. I wanted to see your faces during this time. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Third Place, Kalani, for hosting us tonight. He did us the great honor of dropping some links into the chat. So any people who would like to check out our books, they're collected there. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight It really means a lot for you to join our conversation, which we have recorded and will be sharing online soon enough. So thank you so much, y'all.
Thank
Yes.
you, Amber. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Lena.
Bye.
Yes, thank you, Lena, Kristen, Amber. I'm going to end our event again, but just wanted to once again reiterate Seismic. I did share the link in there. It is a downloadable PDF, but our 3 stores do have some copies available. And then, of course, we do have Subduction, Water and Salt, and Ordinary Cruelty available at each of our stores right now. So do make sure you buy those. I'm going to give our authors the final word again, and then I'll be logging us off. Have a good night, everyone.
Keep your promises to yourself, people. Please make a promise right now and keep it. You got this.
Let's have our literary scene look a lot more like this.
Yes,
Wow.
this is beautiful. Thank you so much. It's such a gift to be with you. A huge, huge boost.
Yeah. Smiles.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Night.
Night.